Hey, indie filmmakers. I'm Griffin Hammond in the middle of the Consumer Electronics Show. There's 150,000 people here, and I'm going to try to find my co-host, Nick.
I'm at the corner by this.
Are you near the, Samsung VR stuff? I'm trying to think of where the Engadget stage is.
I see we're recording already. Outstanding.
So, Nick, first impressions of your first Consumer Electronics Show.
It's a bit crazy. It took me a lot longer to get in the building than I anticipated.
What kinds of things are you seeing so far?
Panasonic hairdryer.
Yeah.
Didn't expect that.
So the Consumer Electronics Show really is like everything that consumers might buy. There's like washers and dryers here.
Absolutely.
So I was tethered to the Panasonic booth for most of CES, but when Nick arrived, we got to walk around together.
It was way, 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 way bigger than I thought it was going to be. Parking.
Yeah, there's 3 halls. The North Hall, the Central Hall, South Hall.
And I saw the Central Hall. I think that's all I saw. But there was just no time to go to the North Hall or South Hall.
Yeah, there was like a lot of automotive stuff in the North Hall. The Central Hall is where Panasonic and some of the other camera manufacturers were. But like CES is refrigerators and
cell phone cases and kids' toys. And I mean, you saw a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it's everything you could possibly think of that's electronic. So was there anything that surprised you?
The dancers. That was definitely not what I expected.
When you go to these like camera trade shows, they often have like the shooting gallery set up, and there's like at Photokina in Germany, it was crazy. They had like samurais and stuff. I think Canon had that, and Sony had crazy stuff. And Panasonic had like a woman swinging with a waterfall. Like they went all out in Germany.
Well, now I feel like I didn't see anything that special. I thought it was pretty cool though.
Well, yeah, I mean CS was like. It was cool to be there, but it's not that much filmmaking stuff there. It's just kind of everything.
We did see some interesting things, though. We saw Steadicam kicking off their first Kickstarter.
We're looking to raise $100,000. We're about 75% since Thursday. And this is actually a Steadicam made for your mobile phone.
This is weighted and it has an electronic gimbal?
There are 2 gimbal motors in there, so there's a gyroscope in there, so it helps absorb any extra movement while you're on your cell phone. This is going to retail for $199, and right now it's going to be released in June.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting.
I was confused when I first saw it because of the Kickstarter. I assumed it wasn't Steadicam brand, because why would they need a Kickstarter?
I mean, I guess it makes sense from a brand perspective. Why not jump on this bandwagon of crowdfunding? It's a way to like for me, with Sriracha, I didn't necessarily need to fund the film. I was comfortable investing my own money, but I suppose having all those people engaged and literally invested was good. It was exciting for everyone. So maybe Steadicam can do the same thing.
I don't know. It felt a little strange to me, like they were, it's Kickstarter's turning into kind of a pre-order system instead of a way to actually get the funds to bring something to fruition. Though, yeah. I mean, they had the device. It was done. It was cool. I told you this, my iPhone does such a great job of stabilization already. I'm not quite sure why I would need this product.
I mean, it was cool tech, but yeah, it's like I'm not sure I would need to walk around with a $200 foot-long thing.
Yep, I agree.
So I was looking around for filmmaking stuff, like DJI. They had some monitors apparently. So I went over to their booth, but they had already taken down the drone stuff. And then I heard that Kodak was re-releasing Ektachrome, some apparently popular film.
I honestly didn't know they were still making film.
I am Diane Carroll-Yacoby. I'm from Rochester, New York.
Yeah.
My title is Worldwide Product Portfolio Manager for our motion picture line of film.
I've been up to Rochester. It's like Kodak country, right?
It is. It is. We're still there and we're still making film.
So I hear you're bringing back Ektachrome.
It's been gone for a few years, but our customers have been asking us for a color reversal film again. Digital has its place, but film offers something different and unique. Digital has gotten better, film has gotten better, but there's nothing in a digital project that will ever look exactly like film.
Last week, Nick and I talked at length about the new Panasonic GH5, and of course I spent a week at the Consumer Electronics Show with Panasonic people, so when Nick showed up, we got to chat with some experts.
Yeah, that was great, because I actually never understood what an all-eye codec was, and got that explained to me.
Check 1 2, check 1 2. How's it going, Griffin?
We're here at the Panasonic booth with Matt Fraser and Sean Robinson from Panasonic. These guys both know everything. about the GH5?
I wouldn't say everything, but I think between the two of us, we would make one marginally competent DP.
Well, and Sean, you just gave me the new firmware. It's still pre-production firmware for my GH5, and so now I can shoot 180 frames per second in 1080.
Yeah, that's right. 180 frame per second, 1080, and 60 frame per second in 4K.
And I hear we'll be able to get 48 frames a second in the Cinema 4K.
Yeah, should be able to do that as well. Yeah, you're talking about in the 4096 by 2160.
Yeah, that's like slightly wider than the normal 4K mode, but some
Right.
people were
Actually,
asking
you
me.
should be able to do 60 as well. So
Oh,
you should be
wow.
able to do 48 and 60. It's
Yeah.
right in the overcrank undercrank menu for the VFR mode.
Okay. And eventually, we'll be able to do 10-bit 422 in Cinema 4K.
Yes, absolutely. 10-bit 422 will be available up to 2430.
And you guys are even bringing higher bitrate as well, like 400 megabits eventually?
Yeah, we want to make sure we kill your memory cards. We're going to do a 400 megabit all intra codec. I think the key here is all intra. ProRes is something we get asked for an awful lot.
Yeah.
What makes ProRes so easy to edit is not the name ProRes. It's the fact that it's an all intra codec.
Okay.
So intra frames, does that mean like every frame is an iframe basically?
Look at the big brain on you. That's absolutely right. Yes.
I don't even think I know exactly what that means, though, that every frame is an iframe.
Do we want to go into this?
Correct me if I'm wrong, like H.264 or something will have an iframe which has a bunch of information, and then the next frames might just describe what's different from that previous frame.
A B frame will take the components of the first iframe and the last iframe, and they'll make up a B frame. And then we take and use motion vectoring between I and B to create those other frames, and that's how we create this smaller overall file size. With all intro, we don't have to reassemble. Frame 1 has all the information we need. Frame 2 has all the information we need. It's just much easier for the computer to work.
File sizes might be a little larger, but the overall processing required is going to be a lot lower.
Exactly. So we're going from 150 megabit now to 400 megabit to keep it all I, and that's going to really make your editing software much smoother to work with.
Cool. Thank you for that.
Thank you for bringing that up, by the way. The fact that you mentioned all I got excited, I got to say.
You were also showing me Vlog. I have Vlog right now on my GH4 to shoot a very much flatter image, and we can do that on the GH5. One thing that kept me from probably using it a lot on the GH4 was it's so flat, I can't really tell what image I'm capturing, but you're going to be able to do LUTs on the GH5, right?
Yes, it is. It can definitely do LUTs now. We'll build in a Rec 709 LUT, and it's in the camera. And then there's positions for you to store 4 more LUTs of your design.
LUTs are lookup tables. These are what tell a monitor how to interpret footage.
Exactly. A very simple way of looking at it is how the color and contrast look in the image. I think the point that Griffin's getting at, though, is that if you shoot log on like a GH4, you can't trust the focus peaking because there's so little contrast in the image to begin with that oftentimes it gets fooled by itself. And when you can apply a LUT inside the camera, now there's a lot more contrast there, but I don't want to bake that LUT in. I want to still record it flat so I can work with it in post, but I want that LUT on set so that I can go ahead and trust my focus peaking, so I can trust my eyes when I see that it looks sharp. And frankly, if I'm dealing with a client and maybe I have a monitor offset and you're saying, hey, look at how beautiful this footage looks, and the client's like,
That doesn't look anything like video.
yeah, it looks black and white.
Yeah.
So the LUTs really help to support that.
So I'm able to capture this flat Vlog look on the SD card, but the screen is showing me whatever LUT version of that I want to see.
Yeah,
Make it a little bit easier to tell what I'm doing.
So Vlog is new to me. Just from a high level, why would I want it? When am I going to use it?
When you shoot in Vlog, we're not applying our NTSC television standard or ATSC television standard gamma curve. So really what it means in layman's terms, you get 2 stops more dynamic range. So we're dealing with a camera that's probably around 10 stops with it. At least the GH4 was around 10 stops. This will be a little bit more than that, going up to 12 stops with the GH5. So I'm getting more shadow detail. I'm getting a flatter overall look.
And I imagine it means you have a lot more latitude for your colorist when you're grading the image.
Yeah, so for the colorist, some of that's also going to depend on the bit depth.
Yeah.
You know, providing somebody a log profile on an 8-bit system, it can cause some banding when your colorist starts to really stretch the profile.
Yeah.
10-bit will resolve that, and that's why we added it.
So a lot of the stuff we're talking about is kind of above my experience level. Like, I'm not someone who uses LUTs. I have only used Vlog L on the GH4 a couple times. I feel like you're adding so many advanced features that filmmakers are asking for. One of them is this anamorphic idea of using the full 4x3 sensor. Tell me about this.
Yeah, we're going back to 1956. That's really what we're doing here. Anamorphic started because people were buying TV sets, and movies were in 4x3 aspect ratio, same shape as a TV.
Yeah, you go watch Casablanca. It's not in widescreen.
Yeah.
It's 4x3.
Wizard of Oz, any of those. The movies got nervous. They wanted people to come back.
They needed a gimmick.
Yeah.
So they went to widescreen.
And so Anamorphic allowed you to squeeze and stretch a very wide, very tall image onto the entire film cell.
Yeah.
And then you just use an anamorphic lens to project it out and it would stretch it back out again. But it imparts a very unique look.
Yeah, it has like interesting lens flares, and when you pull
Really?
focus.
J.J. Abrams?
Yeah.
Is that what he does? Is that how he does that?
That's his trick.
So it has a very unique character that you just don't see with circular lenses.
And it means that we're not capturing a 16:9 shape on the sensor. We're actually capturing the full 4x3 shape.
We're going to eventually give you access to the full, 18 megapixels of that 20 megapixel sensor.
Yeah.
And that means you're going to be like, 4.8K by 4K in height. It's going to be a lot of resolution.
Yeah.
I've researched. I can't find a higher resolution anamorphic mode.
Right.
Maybe a red product would have something, but that'd be about it.
And this will be able to shoot at 30 frames a second?
Or 24.
Yeah. Oh, you'll be able to do both.
Yeah, 23976 or 24.
Yeah. That'll just come with a firmware update for the camera after it's released.
No charge. We'll give you that for free.
Cool. I appreciate you guys taking the time to share some of these details with us. I've been getting a lot of questions, and I've been asking you guys, and most of the questions that I'm answering on Twitter are really your answers coming through me. I guess in the future, are there resources that people should look to get all the information they need?
Through the Lumix USA Twitter account, the Lumix USA Instagram account, whether I answer it, Matt answers it, or we end up reaching back out to you, Griffin, we can get you guys the answers.
Cool. I appreciate your help. In just a moment, we're answering questions about jump cuts, compositing, and if your computer can handle 4K editing.
Hey Indie Filmmakers is brought to you by Tongle.
It's a creative network where anyone, anywhere has the opportunity to make content for brands, and I happen to know several people who've made money for making videos on Tongle. Here's how it works. Brands post a project, then people in the Tongle community submit ideas, and the brand picks the best ones. Then filmmakers make their creative pitch, and the brand decides who gets the project. Great videos get made, and the chosen idea creators and pitch winners get paid.
There are over 120,000 writers, animators, and filmmakers in the Tongle creative community, and you can be one of them by visiting tongle.com. That's TONGAL.com.
And you can always find that in our show notes as well. So we're going to answer some questions, but I want to start with this recording of a question that I answered at Imaging USA. It's a photography conference in San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah. Like, these cameras have different color profiles, and some of them are made for a colorist to deal with. Like we were just talking about, V-Log on the Panasonic cameras is crazy flat, and you do not want to shoot that way if you want a deliverable right away. But if you have a professional working on it, you can shoot in that mode. I like to shoot in the natural color profile. The standard one is very similar. I mean, if you need it to be deliverable, just choose a color profile that you think looks good in the camera. I mean, you can just cycle through it.
All right, first email question is from Brendan Donnelly. Do you have any advice for making jump cuts during talking head pieces where talent is addressing the audience directly? I want the product to look polished and not overly cut up or YouTube style since it's for corporate work. I always feel like I'm interrupting the speaker, even though the cut is between sentences.
You're going to have to cut up a talking head, right? You got to make it shorter. I think when you make the cuts really obvious, it's harder to watch. Like if you cut the audio and the video at the same time, the audience really notices how jarring it is. And if your B-roll that maybe you're covering up the edit with also cuts right at the same time, it all doesn't work very well. So I think if you could do J cuts and L cuts, meaning you put the audio cuts and video cuts in different places, like maybe start the B-roll a few frames before the audio gets cut, then it can be a lot more bearable.
What about in situations where you don't have B-roll? What have you done there?
I mean, I've done things like shoot in 4K and crop in. You can like punch in and kind of make it seem like it was another camera. I don't love doing that, but I've relied on it. There's also the flow transition. Do you know about that, Nick?
That's the kind of the morph from Premiere / After Effects, right?
Yeah. Premiere has the morph edit, which you put a cut, you do morph edit, and it just kind of it morphs them in between the clips to make it look like one seamless clip. It doesn't look perfect if the shots are very different, but it can be effective. And Final Cut just added it too. They're calling it flow transition. Again, I wouldn't rely on it. I think I saw it actually in some of Donald Trump's videos that he's posted on YouTube, and luckily he didn't move too much, so I think it worked. I think they sold it.
You used it in our last episode, didn't you? Or in the trailer, maybe?
Yeah, no, we used it. I used it a bunch in the video of our video podcast version, because we did not actually talk seamlessly for 30 minutes. We took a few cuts and outtakes, and so I tried to hide it under flow edit or flow transition. You guys see if you can find them. This next question came to me on Twitter from Sam Nowak. The question is, what font did you use in your documentary on ice, and how did you get the ice rink look for your text in the credits? So I used a font called Babus New. I've never used it before, but it looks kind of like another font I like called Din, and I liked its kind of blockiness. And then I use a compositing technique called overlay, which, Nick, have you ever used overlay or anything like that?
There's a couple different options. You got overlay and screen. They're like different compositing methods, right?
Yeah, and I just like to play around with them sometimes. I just try different ones and see which one looks best. And overlay looks really cool, like that your background video can kind of shine through the font. So I played around with that a little bit, and then I actually went into Photoshop and just put some actual texture that I shot, some actual ice imagery that I shot, and just put that texture on top of the font to give it this kind of icy look for the credits.
The next question's from Chips on YouTube. How did you manage to make a documentary about a brand? Did Sriracha let you make it?
Nick, do you know this story?
I do know this story, but it's your story. I probably know all your stories, as we'll find out. But basically, you started... I'm going to tell the story now, and you will correct me when I get it wrong. Basically, you originally did not get permission, meaning they told you they were not interested in taking part in this, and you were persistent and kind of proved that you were not out to do anything crazy, and they finally welcomed you in.
They did. Yeah, I did not expect them to say no, but my first email, even though I thought my email was so good, it was like, in one sentence, establish my credibility as a filmmaker, link to something I've done. I'm trying to like make this easy for them to say yes. And then I explain the project, and I'm keeping it short and saying this is going to be so great for you. It's going to be a fun project. I'm a one-man band. It's going to be so, although I lied because Nick ended up coming with me and filming. But it'll be easy. I'll be unobtrusive. And then David Tran just said, nah, that's okay. I don't need to do that.
So how did you change his mind?
Well, I had heard from Randy Clemens, another guy in the documentary, that he had communicated with David before. And so he gave me some tips on like the kinds of things I should probably say to him. And I went back and I was honest and I said, look, I'm not trying to make money on this. I'm just a guy who really respects what you do. I love your story. And I think that's all he needed to hear, that just I wasn't like some big film production trying to make a profit off of him. And that started a dialogue, and he eventually let me in.
I was with you when we did travel to California and interview him and some of his staff, and they really were very, very nice to us. So they were totally on board once they decided to be on board.
Yeah, I think David just probably didn't need to tell his story, and so he was used to saying no. But yeah, he's a super nice guy.
Do you know what his reaction to the film was after it was completed?
I think he had an emotional response to seeing that archival footage. I don't think that David would have had an opportunity to see video or photos of the ship that he came to Hong Kong on from Vietnam, and I was able to find that archival footage. So I heard that meant a lot to him.
The most expensive shots in the whole documentary.
Yeah, I think it cost me $2,500 just to have the rights to use 30 seconds on film festivals, online, DVDs, all that. I mean, I needed a lot of licenses. Do you know how much I spent for audio, for music, on the hand-cut documentary?
I'm going to say $800.
No, I spent $1,200 on 3 songs. I think there were 5 tracks maybe in the documentary. How do you have 5
tracks in a 5-minute documentary?
I want it to move. I want it to change with each scene.
Well, but that's good that you do things the legit way. When we were making our films in high school, I don't think we were seeking out licenses for the audio we were using.
Yeah, no, I think you were using Hans Zimmer a lot. But But eventually I started using like Creative Commons music, stuff you could use for free if you attribute to them. There's different licenses.
Well, and for Sriracha, you actually had a composer work with you, right?
Yeah, Roy Magnuson composed the opening track and a couple other tracks throughout. And then I actually just asked permission of a lot of people who had tracks about Sriracha, like rap songs and stuff, on SoundCloud. I just found these people and tracked them down. And just like David Tran eventually said yes, I think I found that people generally want to say yes. You just have to give them the opportunity to. So if you can pitch yourself as someone who is credible and give them a good reason to participate in your project, all of these people that I asked about using their music, they all said yes. Nick, this is exactly the kind of question I often ask you, because I don't know this stuff. We got this from Willie Payden on YouTube, and he says he has an early 2011 MacBook Pro. He's upgraded both the hard drive to an SSD, a solid-state drive, and the memory to 16 gigabytes. Nonetheless, apparently my graphics card is unable to deal with 3D text found in FCPX, Final Cut Pro 10, and I can't see any 4K B-roll in Final Cut 10 either. Do you have any recommendation of which computer I should go to next? I really want to do 4K, but on my MacBook Pro, it's not possible.
I actually had the early 2011 15-inch MacBook Pro myself, and I did the exact same thing. I'd upgraded the memory myself. I had changed out the hard drive to an SSD, which certainly extends the life. And for basic 1080 and 720 editing, I found it worked really well.
And real quick, the memory upgrade on a MacBook Pro is probably pretty easy, but is the solid-state drive a difficult upgrade?
Well, on the 2011 models, it was pretty easy to do both. You had to remove the back panel, and you could basically get access to everything you needed to. Just a few screws to pull out the hard drive and replace it with an SSD. I also removed the optical drive and put an SSD in its place, which was a bit more intensive. But
that sounds like a hack.
Well, it allowed me to have a hard drive and an SSD, so I had speed and capacity back when SSDs were very expensive.
That's like what I did on my iMac, which is also like a 2011.
But on modern Macs, MacBook Pros, you can't upgrade any of those things. But the new line of MacBook Pros that just came out would be great for editing 4K. I actually just switched to the 13-inch MacBook Pro. If you're really into 4K editing, though, I would say go with the 15-inch as opposed to the 13-inch. Two big reasons. The 15-inch version has quad-core processors instead of dual-core, which is certainly going to help when you're doing video editing. And the 15 inches all have dedicated graphics cards, whereas the 13 inches all have integrated graphics. So for exactly what you're talking about, trying to do 3D motion graphics in 4K, you want that graphics card to be able to offload that work.
Did you know that I had to go out and buy a new iMac just to handle the 4K 60p I was editing?
I do, because I'm the one who told you to go out and buy an iMac to do the 4K 60p editing you were doing.
If I didn't have that, I guess I would have taken the time to proxy edit everything. I could have transcoded everything in Final Cut to a lower res.
Yeah, and it's actually pretty impressive what Final Cut 10 does with lower spec computers. Spec for spec, I think a Windows versus a Mac Premiere needs a beefier setup than Final Cut does. But anytime you're talking about 4K and motion graphics, you're gonna want the best, or you're gonna be in some pain.
Well, yeah, I was asking you if I should upgrade. It came with 8 gigabytes of RAM, and I was like, should I upgrade to 16 or 32? And I think you told me to do 16, and then I also looked online, and someone was doing some benchmarking, and sure enough, they found that having 32 didn't really matter too much for render times, but they were comparing render times of like Premiere and Final Cut on a Mac, and at least on the Mac, I mean, you can't do Final Cut on a PC, but at least on the Mac, the render times were better in Final Cut, and it kind of like made me feel good that I was using this software.
Yeah, there's a huge debate as to Final Cut 10. Is it really professional enough? I've used Adobe Premiere. I've used Final Cut 10. I've used EDS Grass Valley. I've used Avid. I don't think you can go wrong with any of them. I think whatever you're most comfortable on is probably what's best. But since Apple can target just their specific hardware, they really know how to eke out every bit of performance, whereas Premiere has to run on everything ever made. So yeah, I think that's to be expected.
That ends our endorsement of Apple and Final Cut 10. I do want to end with not a question, but a comment that we got from my friend Dave Knopp. He wrote on YouTube, Griffin, you're such a BA with the GH5. And then in parentheses says, brand ambassador.
All right, that's funny.
And he says, great podcast, guys. Thanks for sharing. And I do want to point you to Dave Knopp's YouTube channel. You guys should check it out at youtube.com/KnopTop. That's KNOPTOP. He actually has a great video right now called You Won't Learn This in Film School.
Stop talking about your film. Don't talk about your film. Just go make your film.
This past Monday, Griffin was on the podcast Making Movies is Hard, so definitely check that out. I've got it queued up in my podcast player. Looking forward to listening to that.
Yeah, it's a full hour of me talking about self-distribution stuff in Sriracha. It was fun.
So if you're not getting enough Griffin yet, this is where you can get some more.
This is the part of the show where I tell you all the other podcasts that I'm on. It is the part of the show where I say thank you to Saman Shariati, who was our first iTunes review. Did you know this, Nick?
I did. I think we have 4 iTunes reviews now, which was very exciting.
And I'm told that it helps. I don't know exactly how, but I think that when you have iTunes reviews, that maybe you get served up more in search.
So we would never ask for reviews. We were just going to tell you how much they help us.
And we're just going to tell you how much we love Saman Shariati for doing it.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for this week, so thanks for listening.
Goodbye. That's like the warp edit in Adobe After Effects, right?
Sorry, it's morph edit.
What did I say?
You said warp.
I got it right the first time, didn't I?
Yeah, you did, yeah.